Hi, I'm Kylie and welcome to this week's episode of Money, 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 where we cut out the jargon and talk about all things financial. Hi and welcome back to this episode of Money, Money, Money. I have with me today Steph from Meredith Lawyers, and we're going to be discussing, unfortunately, what happens quite often now, separation and divorce. So Steph, welcome firstly.
Thank you for having me.
Now, should someone come to see a solicitor before going into any type of financial arrangement?
Sure. When people are going through a separation, there's a lot that they need to think about. There's a lot of changes that are going to be coming around, and often people put the important questions to the end because they don't feel like important questions at the time. Before entering into any kind of financial agreement, it's always advised that people seek legal advice, and this is one of those moments for sure.
Okay. So if we agree to everything and we're both happy with what we've agreed to, why should we go and see a solicitor?
Sure. If you and your partner have already agreed to something, that's great. I like to say to people that that's the perfect time to go and see a lawyer and get things sorted out more officially. You don't have to go see a lawyer. There's no requirement that you do so. However, there are going to be certain aspects of agreements that might need to be have a technical touch, or you might find that you've entered into an agreement which ultimately may not be in your interests, and it is important that you find out the information to make sure you get it done right.
Yeah, that's great advice. So look, at the local loan company, as I said before, we see a lot of clients either at the start of the separation or midway through it or towards the end, and we often ask by them that say, a friend of ours said it was easy to do the paperwork, why can't we just do it? Now we've seen some pretty horrendous results from that, and so we usually advise them to go and see a lawyer, but why shouldn't they just do the paperwork themselves?
Well, strictly speaking, you can do the paperwork yourselves. The paperwork that people are normally referring to is what's called a Form 11, application for consent, in the Family Court of Western Australia. So again, strictly speaking, you can do it yourself, and there's a lot of information available online. However, the documents are not that easy. They are very lengthy. You are required to add particular things if you're in a de facto relationship, particular things if you're from a marriage. Additionally, if you have children, there are additional requirements as well. So you can try to draft the paperwork yourself. Don't be surprised if you go down to the registry and file it and you get some negative feedback. If you want to make sure that your documents are completely up to scratch, either get feedback from a lawyer, or if you have the funds, consider seeking a lawyer to draft them for you.
Okay. So we often see clients where they've come back and said that the court has said things are not just and equitable.
Yeah.
Is that the right word?
Yeah.
So if they're both happy with it and they're happy with it, why does the court say it's not just and equitable, and why can't they just go ahead with what they've agreed to?
Sure. The technical lawyer in me wants to tell you about a particular court case that happened in 2012, but I won't do that. The term just and equitable is a legal term, and it's the boundaries within which the court can pronounce orders by consent or otherwise pertaining to property. Now, you might have come to an agreement which feels completely fair to you, but in effect maybe doesn't fit within that legal construct of what is just and equitable. So that's where that feedback is coming from, that objectively it may not reach the court's requirements whilst you are happy with it. However, there are ways to get around it, and if you find yourself in that situation, that is when I would certainly be considering going and seeing a lawyer.
All right, so on that, I've seen them, and because people have brought them into work, I've seen a consent order, and I've also been a BFA.
Yeah, a binding financial agreement.
That's what. Okay, so what is the actual difference between those two things?
Sure. So you've got your consent orders. That is a pre-prescribed document which is filed in the Family Court of Western Australia. The result of those documents is a court order, as if you had gone to trial and had a big fight and it's taken years and years and years, but instead it's all done by consent. The court stamps an order and off you go. That order is automatically enforceable, and you generally can't change anything up about it. The binding financial agreement is the alternative. Now, that doesn't have to be just and equitable in some circumstances, and you don't have to wait for the court either. Both parties need to sign the document after having both received legal advice, and normally you'll find that a lawyer needs to write that
Different
document.
lawyers?
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely
Yep.
different lawyers,
Okay.
independent legal advice. Lawyers can only work for one party. So both parties will sign the BFA, and that is not as automatically enforceable in the court. It's still enforceable once you take it into court if any party breaches it.
Yeah.
But importantly, what both documents do is they bypass the stamp duty obligations from the Office of State Revenue if you decide to transfer property from one party to the other, and they also deal with your entire matrimonial or de facto asset pool and finish it all up for you.
So that, just going back on that, Steph, when you're talking about stamp duty, I think
Yes.
that's really important in regard to finances, is that if you've shared a marital home or lived together as de facto and one is going to buy out the other,
Yeah.
is that how they get to avoid paying stamp duty again, is by having these consent orders or a BFA?
Yeah, because otherwise, if you and your partner own a home and one party decides to buy the other out, without a court order or binding financial agreement, it's just a standard seller-purchaser situation, which attracts tax from the Office of State Revenue. If you've got a binding financial agreement or a consent order, then by virtue of the jurisdiction of the family court,
Yep.
the stamp duty obligation is waived. So really, all you'll be looking to pay is legal fees. If you decide to get a lawyer to draft things up for you, you won't have to pay stamp duty on your house.
And they can be considerably less than actually paying your half of the stamp duty.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Sometimes 3 or 4 times the price, depending on what the value of your property is.
Yeah. Now, I got asked a really interesting question the other day, and I'm probably going to put you on the spot, so sorry, Steph.
Go for it.
But I had a client ask me, if I'm happy and
Yeah.
he's happy, why do we even need to go to court, get consent orders? Can't
Yeah.
we just separate, I'm going to do this and he's going to do that, and we're happy ever after?
Yeah.
I mean, there's some concern though, isn't there? There's that down the track,
Yeah.
if one finds another partner, suddenly there's a whole shift in assets and...
Yeah, it can be a bit complex. Strictly speaking, unless you are looking to do the stamp duty, unless you're looking to have a superannuation split, or there's any items of a company or significant property, you may not need to get court orders. But if you
There's always a but.
there's always a but.
Yeah.
If you don't, there is a time period after your divorce or after your de facto separation within which the other party can still sue you, or you can sue them, for property. So you live in limbo as to whether or not you're actually safe. And a lot of people within the 2 years after they've separated will repartner, or at very least purchase another house or purchase another car, start developing their own separate asset pool. But because it hasn't been dealt with in the beginning, it still forms part of that question of later on. And you can have somebody who's in a de facto relationship who separates, they sort their own stuff out, then go and buy a house. If you find yourself in the court, that house is now part of the pool. Everything's in it. So
it's not the date of separation that determines your assets.
It's the date
Yeah.
of the question being asked. So if you have found that you've added more things to your asset pool or reduced things in your asset pool personally,
Yeah.
then that will come into question if the question is then brought up within that time period. So I always say to people, if you can, close the chapter there
Yeah.
before you reopen the chapter financially to protect yourself.
That's really interesting, and I don't think a lot of people actually know
They
that.
don't.
Sort of, we stumbled across it through having a dealing with you, Steph, but I just don't think it's actually out there commonplace. Look, the other question we get asked a lot is, what about mediation? Should we attend it? Is it helpful, or is it just another waste of money?
No, it really comes down to you and your former partner. Some people are able to come to an agreement together. It's very amicable and they move forward. Other people, they have some teething problems. There may be particular items of property that they're not happy with, or the relationship has very much broken down and they can't have a constructive conversation about what they want to do. So going to a mediator will allow you to have a discussion which is helped through by a professional to assist you in reaching an agreement together, so that you can still try to do things by consent without having to have a big fight in the court. The thing with mediation is that it's both public and private, so you can either go through a public service like Relationships Australia, Anglicare, Centrecare. They either have a no or low fee or scaled fee system for people. Alternatively, you can go to a private mediator. They do charge on an hourly basis. There's some really good private mediators available throughout Perth, and you just have to do a quick Google search to find them. The skills that both of those practitioners, either public or private, are the same. They both have to be what's called family dispute resolution practitioners before they're able to qualify in the court. It's just really a timing thing. You might find that you have to wait a bit longer to get into a private service rather than a public one. On that note, importantly, if you decide that you do want to eventually, if you get to that point and you have to sue the other party or you do have to commence proceedings, you have to show that you've had some form of negotiation, whether in writing or through a mediator. You must. And if it involves children at all, you have to have what's called a Section 60I certificate, which can only be issued by a family dispute resolution mediator.
Yeah. Okay. So where can I get more information, Steph, about before I go and actually see a lawyer? Because you can Google it sometimes and
it's a mess. Yeah.
Well, it's a mess, and everybody's got an opinion, and they're not always necessarily too well informed.
Very true.
And other ones are so well informed, it's complicated to read.
Very true. So the first place to start should always be the Family Court of Western Australia. You can do a Google search. Make sure you choose Western Australia, not Australia, because we have a different jurisdiction here. There are a host of brochures and kits available online at the Family Court that can help you understand the process that you're about to go through. You can also go to the Legal Aid of Western Australia website. They've got a lot of information, as well as Relationships Australia and Anglicare. Additionally, recently I was commissioned to help draft the content for a website which is what I like to call Family Law 101 for people who are either thinking about doing things themselves or want to get a little bit clued in before they go and see a lawyer. That website is youandfamilylaw.antoniobeauty.com.
Yep, and it's a great website, so I do recommend if you're in this situation that you do go and have a look at the website. It's got some great information in there for you.
And that's all free information. You can access that at any time.
Yeah, which is even better. Free lawyers. Sorry, that's good. So just before we conclude, is it a good idea to go and see about my finances before I come and see a lawyer? So if I was going through a separation, should I perhaps go and speak to a mortgage broker or a professional just about where I stand on my own?
A lot of the time those services need to work together. So your financial advisor or your finance broker will need to work together with your lawyer because there'll be questions that come up at different parts of the process.
Yeah.
Before you come in to see a lawyer, it is a good idea to have gone and seen your mortgage broker to see what any borrowing capacity you might have, any hiccups with your borrowing capacity. Maybe might go and speak to your financial advisor about what funds you have available and also what your long-term plan is. With a financial separation, you generally only get to do it once, and lawyers can only answer some questions for you. The rest need to come down to advisors, brokers and accountants. So you'll need to use that information in tandem. What I normally say to clients is if they haven't seen a broker when they come in to see me, that they definitely go and do so or get that financial advice, that they definitely do.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that you see when people come in to see you, or can I do this kind of separation where you need to go see a lawyer?
Yeah.
So make sure that you are touching base with all of those professional services before you start the ball rolling too fast.
And that they're all happy to work together, because I find that's the biggest challenge is if we're trying to help a client here but it's not as forthcoming in the other way. It's far
and we
more
need
difficult.
to know what we're talking about, and we can provide the best service to a client when we know exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah. So just before we finish, just want to remind everyone that this is being filmed in Western Australia. So some of the information may be applicable very generally, but you will need to go and check with your own state board, lawyer?
Yeah, you can go to the Law Society of your state, and you can also try the Family Court of Australia if you find yourself outside of WA. Generally, the jurisdiction over in the eastern states is the same, but we have different de facto rules here in WA, and it's important that you're clued up on your local court and your local laws, and that you touch base with lawyers in your local area.
And that's interesting, because I would have just assumed Australia was all the same.
No,
so
we have subtle differences. We like to be different here in the West.
Yeah. So that was really informative, Steph. So thanks for coming and having
My
a
pleasure.
coffee
Thank you for having me.
today. You can eat the donuts
and how.
And we'll see you next time on Money, Money, Money. Thanks for watching Money, Money, Money. If you liked this video, hit the red subscribe button. If you'd like to know more information, you can follow us on Facebook or go to our website, linked in the information box below.